Namaste, my love. Can you hear me okay? Oh. So let me start. Namaste and welcome to the Advaita channel. My name is Jayani and I'll be reading the Song of the Ribhu. And I've got Nitya here with me. If anybody's watching on YouTube, you can comment in the chat window and I've put the Hangout link in the chat window if you'd like to join us in the Hangout. Hi, Atma, my love. You can't join the Hangout, but you're here. Oh, I'm so happy. I've missed you. And I love you so much. You just plugged my computer in. But we are one heart. I'm already crying. Okay, so Nidacha, I shall tell you now the definition. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Om Shri Satguru Mujijiki Jai, Anantajiki Jai, Sangaji Jai. Salutations to these beloved masters. You are the embodiment of truth. You speak directly to that as that, and that is what hears them. Nidacha, I shall tell you now the definition of the most secret, the quintessence of all essences, the conclusion of the Vedas, the same manner as it is expounded by the Lord Ishvara, the embodiment of existence, consciousness, bliss. Listen with a steady mind. All is of the nature of the Supreme Brahman. Sorry, my eyes are really itchy. All is of the nature of the Supreme Brahman. There is nothing apart as all. Our nature is, indeed, that non-dual Brahman. There is not a shred of doubt about this. I say this in the name of Shiva. Rare soul, therefore, attaining the indivisible, complete certitude that all is ever the undivided Supreme Brahman, and that I am. Be always in bliss. Namaste Triptiji, my love. Thank you for being here. I'm going to shuffle between the two, the Hangout and the YouTube, but I may forget. With the steadfast certitude that I am Brahman, cast aside the thought of the body and such. with a certitude, with a steadfast certitude that the world is Brahman. Cast aside the thought that the world is real. If you are thus continuously certain that I am Brahman, and the world is Brahman, the delusion of the world, the Supreme, and myself will wilt away like a flower gripped in the hands of a sleeper. Space and other elements exist not. The world exists not. The differentiation as Lord Ishvara and the individual Jiva exists not. I exist not, nor you, nor anyone else. Name exists not, nor does form exist. All is ever the mass of knowledge, the Supreme Brahman. If you are thus certain, until you attain stable wisdom, the delusion of differences will disappear with the development of the maturity of knowledge. Does sound okay, Nitya? If you always flawlessly practice the certitude that the body exists not, the senses exist not, the beings exist not, ideas exist not, the mind exists not, the ego exists not, thoughts exist not, its root, ignorance, exists not. If the firm certitude of the Supreme Brahman is practiced faultlessly always, the manifold mind that differentiates will disappear like the darkness before the sun. There is no wakefulness, no dream, no sleep, no fourth state to be sought, nothing of multiplicity, nothing as a collection of separates or an integrated coalescence, and no world of parts at all. Attaining the certitude of the undivided Supreme, that all ever is Brahman, and thereby correcting all misconceptions of the mind, abide as the exalted Supreme Brahman alone. Whatever is seen in illusion as a part, whatever is seen in illusion as a part, on the substratum of all, the Supreme Brahman, is nothing but the substratum, the Supreme Brahman itself, not a trace apart. Attaining such certitude, be worthy, but attaining such certitude by worthy inquiring in the process of negation, and thereby changing all misconceptions of the mind, ever abide in the exalted Supreme Brahman alone. I saw Tripti for a second there. I'm going to read that one again. Wherever is seen in illusion as a part, on the substratum of all, the Supreme Brahman, is nothing but the substratum, the Supreme Brahman itself, and not a trace apart. How could it be? Attaining such certitude by worthy inquiry in the process of negation, and thereby changing all the misconceptions of the mind, ever abide as the exalted Supreme Brahman alone. What is conceived as separate is duality. The inquiry into the undivided Supreme will remove this misconception. All that are of the nature of delusion, all that are completely unreal, All such appearances are the nature of the partless Supreme Brahman. By such certitude of the undivided Supreme, undefiled by the idea of anything else, abide as the non-dual Supreme Brahman alone. The discrimination between eternal and the ephemeral. This discrimination between good and bad. This discrimination between devotee, bhakta, and the liberated one, mukta. The discrimination between the existent and the non-existent. And such manifold appearances are of the nature of the universal, blemishless Supreme. By such certitude of the changeless, undivided Absolute, abide as the non-dual Supreme Brahman alone. Various scriptures, such as the Vedas and others, the teacher and the disciple who study these, the idea of the body that is conceived as being myself, the idea of myself as being the idea of myself being of the nature of all seer, the Supreme Brahman, all such appearances of differences are of the nature of the partless Supreme Brahman. By such constant certitude of the undivided Supreme Brahman, abide in the exalted Supreme Brahman alone. That I am ever the individual subject to bondage, that I am ever the Brahman without bondage, that all this manifold world, manifest world is real, that this wondrous world and such are unreal. All such perceptions are of the nature of the all-pervasive Supreme Brahman. By such exalted certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the exalted Supreme Brahman alone. So beautiful. All the ideas that cloud the mind, such as the actions to be performed daily, the steadfast devotion, the endless contemplation of the chosen gods, and the worships of idols of such gods, are all the nature of the exalted Supreme Brahman. By such profound certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the taintless Supreme Brahman alone. The sense of possession, which thinks of this as mine, the ego, which thinks of I, the variegated things that are considered external, the several things that are considered internal, all appearances of such different categories are of the nature of Supreme Brahman without a second. By such profound certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the taintless Supreme Brahman alone. How could anything be outside of this? The pentad of great elements, such as space and the others. The pentad of categories, such as speech and the others. The endless variety of the world to which the experiencer is subject. The millions of galaxies of the cosmos are such baseless experiences. All such baseless appearances are of the nature of Supreme Brahman. By such undiminishing certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the non-dual Supreme Brahman alone. The pentad of the revered groups of the Brahma, the Creator, and other gods. The pentad of activities such as creation and the others. The gods, sages, humans, and other groups distinguished as such. The variety of wandering animals and all classes of appearances are of the nature of the blemishless Supreme Brahman. By such firm certitude of undivided Absolute, abide as the non-dual Supreme Brahman alone. All such continuing appearances of duality, such as sacred streams, hallowed shrines, service to shining gods therein, forests, mountains, oceans, rivers, forest, and the variety of beings therein, are all of the nature of the one blemishless Supreme Brahman. By such persistent certitude of the undivided Supreme Brahman, abide as the Supreme Brahman without a second. All projections that arise as a picture, such as the decisive functioning of the intellect, the doubtful functioning of the mind, the eerie emanations of thought, the multiplicity of experiences, all these activities are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, consciousness alone. By such clear certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the Supreme Brahman, the mass of bliss alone. All these differentiated perceptions that arise, such as the body, the senses, the beings, the uncertain mind, the intellect, the ego which arises, thought, and the ignorance that is the prime cause of all, are entirely of the nature of the differenceless Supreme Brahman. By such sorrowless certitude of the undivided Supreme Brahman, abide as the Supreme Brahman, the mass of bliss alone. All these conceptions that arise, such as delusions and nescience, the individual being, the Supreme Lord, the distinction as the individual and the supreme, the variety of integral wholes or collections of separate things. This is high, this is low, and these are equal, are entirely of the nature of Supreme Brahman, the shining consciousness. By such committed certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the Supreme Brahman, the blemishless alone. It's all the same, isn't it? Hi, Tripti. Can you hear me, love? Are you good? Oh, no, maybe not. Shame. I think she's having internet issues. It's just like everything is the same. Nothing can be greater than anything else. Oh, shame. It's completely unfathomable. The integral wholes or collections of separate things that are gross. The integral wholes and collections of separate things that are subtle. The integral wholes and collections of separate things that are causal. The complete, the little, and the mixed, and all such manifold appearances are all the nature of the Supreme Brahman, consciousness. By such intense certitude, abide as the Supreme Brahman, which alone is the reality. The cosmic experiencer of the waking state who experiences the integral whole. I love this. The individual experiencer of the waking state who experiences the discrete, the Lord and the beings and the variety of their mutual bondages, the division of the world as the world, individuals, and the supreme. All are false appearances, are the nature of the imperishable Supreme Brahman. By such auspicious certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the Supreme Brahman, the changer. Even the cosmic experiencer of the waking state, who experiences the integral whole. I have no idea what you guys are saying. Are you fine, Tripti? Is she fine, Nitya? No, maybe not. Even the cosmic experience of the waking state, who experiences the integral whole. All are false appearances, and all of the nature of the imperishable Supreme Brahman. All such perceptions as this being the particularized direct meaning, this being the impeccable indirect meaning, and this being the meaning of differenceless identity, and this being the indefinable natural supreme reality, are of the nature of the spotless Supreme Brahman. By such committed certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the Supreme Brahman, true awareness alone. She cannot hear anything, not here. She's not on She's also not on YouTube. She has already okay. She's restarting her computer. All such explanations as the natural meaning of words being the direct, the special meaning of words being indicated, direct interpretations as expressed being the primary, and special interpretations as being the intended, are of the nature of the take as Supreme Brahman. By such arising of the certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the Supreme Brahman, the nature of awareness alone. All the seemingly firm conclusions that identity cannot be brought out by the discarded interpretation. I'm just going to start again. All the seemingly firm conclusions that identity cannot be brought out by the discarded interpretation, that identity cannot be brought out by accepted interpretation, that the identity of the individual and the Supreme will shine forth. By these two interpretations, all are all the nature of the shining existence. Excuse me. There's a sneezes. Excuse me. Chupti, can you hear Nala? Excuse me. All the seemingly firm conclusions that identity cannot be brought out by the discarded interpretation, letting things go, setting them aside. That identity cannot be brought out by accepted interpretation, that the identity of the individual and the Supreme will shine forth. By one of these two interpretations, all are all of the nature of the shining existence, the Supreme Brahman. By such disciplined certitude of the undivided Absolute, abideth the Supreme Brahman, full of consciousness alone. The defectless, unconditioned nature can alone be the defectless, unconditioned nature can alone be the meaning of the great aphorism, and the undifferentiated conditioned nature can never be the meaning of the great aphorisms. I don't know what an aphorism is. My brain is. I'm going to start again. The defectless, unconditioned nature can alone be the meaning of the great aphorism, and the differentiated conditioned nature can never be the meaning of the great aphorisms. And all manifold appearances such as these are the nature of the blemishless Supreme Brahman. By such clear certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the Supreme Brahman, the actionless alone. As all the crest of the Vedas proclaim, that all is of the nature of Supreme Brahman, as all men of wisdom with knowledge of the Supreme Brahman also declare likewise, and because of the nature of the grace of Shiva already conferred on me, dispelling all darkness, there is not an atom of doubt in this explanation of the certitude of the undivided Absolute. This is definite. Whatever is seen as a superimposition on the substratum, the Supreme Brahman, upon inquiry, is found only to be the substratum itself, and not the form of the superimposition. It is only to those of profound meditation that this experience will result, and this experience will not occur at any time for those who are dominated by a hopping mind. Hence, having the practice of one-pointed, profound meditation always, that all the illusory appearances are indeed the Supreme Brahman, the substratum, and the defectless Brahman is myself, and I am the Supreme Brahman of bliss, and casting aside all the misapprehensions of the fickle mind, attain the knowledge of the undifferentiated, undivided Absolute, and abide as the Supreme Brahman, the partless, alone. Great sage, it is only for those who abide as the Supreme Brahman, by the means of the supreme, undivided knowledge, as foresaid, that this disease of birth and death cycle will disappear. It can never be destroyed for others, hence attaining undivided knowledge, as aforesaid, and becoming thereby the undifferentiated Supreme Brahman, efface all fearsome sorrow of repetitious birth, and enjoy the differenceless joy of liberation. As expounded by the blemishless Shiva, I have told you very firmly the definition of the undivided Absolute, that all is the undivided Supreme Brahman, and that Brahman, with nothing apart, is ourselves. Those who have, with purity of heart and with all attention, even once listened to and understood this extremely secret interpretation without doubt, shall attain imperishable bliss of liberation. Undifferentiated knowledge of the Supreme Brahman will be revealed only to those good men who are devoted to Shiva and perform daily worship and other offerings to Shiva at the feet of the blemishless linga. Only those courageous men who have properly attained such knowledge of Supreme Brahman will be released from relentless repetitious birth. Rare soul, there is not an atom of doubt about this. In the name of the undivided Supreme Shiva, what is said is the truth. The all-knowing sage, Sutta, thus informed the assembly of sages about the changeless supreme reality. Trupti, can you hear now, love? If you are you? Oh, she won't hear me. The all-knowing sage, Sutta, thus informed the assembly of sages about the changeless supreme reality, the same that the omniscient Skanda told, the honored and faultless Jayeshvara, don't know how to pronounce these names, that, in the manner early expounded by the Lord of the worlds, that is supreme Ishvara, the sage Ribhu now explained to Niddaha the definition of the undivided absolute, that all is Brahman, that we are. It is the infinite form of our God of gods in the stateless of it is the infinite form of our God of gods in the state of faultless dance that proclaims. That's so beautiful. Yay! Can you hear? Yay! Yippee! Versteh ich nicht. This is so beautiful. It is in the infinite form of our God of gods in the state of faultless dance that proclaims, by the knowledge that there is nothing apart from Brahman, the differenceless, undivided nature, that all defective appearances are all the one perfectly full absolute, and that we are originless absolute. We can abide as that. So beautiful. Shall I read another chapter? It's so beautiful. With conclusive certitude I shall tell you the greatness of this treatise, which is the essence of all variety of treatises. I don't even know how to say that. The quintessence of all essences, the most secret, the extremely rare, in a manner you can appreciate without illusions. Always practice the teachings of this worthy treatise without fail, with that as your goal, and with that as your goal. I am ever existence alone. There is no doubt of this. Ever consciousness alone. There is no doubt of this. Hi, Pekka. Namaste. It's so beautiful to be with you guys. And to read these beautiful words. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a wreck. It's just so beautiful. I love Ribhu. I love it so much. I'm going to start this number 2 again. It's so funny because reading them, they're just words, and some of the words I can't really pronounce, but the essence is just there. Oh, my glasses. I am ever existence alone. There is no doubt of this. I am ever consciousness alone. There is no doubt of this. I am ever bliss alone. There is no doubt of this. I am ever the pure, absolute. There is no doubt of this. I am ever the wholly complete. There is no doubt of this. I am ever the highest of the high. There is no doubt of this. I am ever the supreme Shiva. There is no doubt of this. I am ever the supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. Whatever exists is the supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. Whatever does not exist is the supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. All is the Supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. You and I are the Supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. Everything is the Supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. The real and the unreal are the Supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. The entirety of the Supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. That I am that Supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. All indeed is of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, existence alone, and not differentiated from the Self. Brahman indeed is the Self. The Self indeed is the undifferentiated nature of the Supreme Brahman. There is not the least difference between the blemishless, all-pervasive Self and the all-complete, perfectly full Brahman. Both are the same. In the name of Shiva, in the name of awareness, what is said is the truth. And how could it not be? All names and forms are Brahman. We are that Brahman. Excuse me, I have to blow my nose. All names and forms are Brahman. We are that Brahman. There is not the least doubt about this explanation declared for the welfare of all. This is the truth. In the name of the great truth, Shiva, the all-pervasive, transcending all abodes, without the least doubt about this, it's yes or no. Be of the steadfast certitude, as the aforesaid. All the appearances, mobile and immobile, are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, the reality. That immemorial nature is myself indeed, attaining such complete certitude, and thereby removing all the intractable misapprehensions, attaining the delusionless knowledge of the blemishless Absolute, and becoming of the nature of the afflictionless Supreme Brahman, changelessly abide in yourself. This state of changeless abidance in yourself is the pure supreme liberation. Tossing like the wave, without abidance in oneself, alone is bondage. If looked into deeply, other than yourself, the one existence, there is not an iota of any cause for change. Hence, blessed one, you should ever abide in yourself, by yourself. I'm going to read that one again. This state of changeless abidance in yourself is the pure supreme liberation. Tossing like the wave, without abidance in oneself, alone is bondage. If looked into deeply, other than yourself, the one existence, there is not an iota of any cause for change. Hence, blessed one, you should ever abide in yourself, by yourself. As the means of abiding in oneself by oneself is the attainment of the certitude of the undifferentiated, undivided Absolute, of all the appearances arising as apart from oneself, as never being anything apart, and of all being the Self, and the Self is oneself. By holding fast the certitude of the undivided Absolute, as foresaid, become the undifferentiated Absolute. There is nothing apart from you, yourself, the Self. It is certain that all is yourself, indeed. I am declaring this after investigation of all the scriptures. This is the definite supreme truth. Touching the feet of the exalted Shiva, I say unto you, this is the undoubted certitude. Touching the feet of the Guru, I say unto you, this is the certitude of the crest of the Vedas. Holding a heated battle axe on my tongue, I asseverate this. I asseverate this. There is no doubt in what I say. The certitude of the undivided Absolute is the greatest acquisition of all knowers of truth. Pure One, therefore, attaining forever the certitude of the undifferentiated, undivided Absolute, without doubts, and thereby becoming the Absolute itself, be always in unequaled bliss. Changeless certitude is the unparalleled means for attaining the state of undivided bliss. As you progress more and more in this exalted certitude, the duality of the world and such will disappear. If the appearance of despicable duality recedes, spotless bliss will spontaneously arise. Remain with fearless certitude, attaining thereby undivided supreme bliss. You indeed are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, all existence. You indeed are of the nature of Supreme Brahman, the changeless. You indeed are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, all consciousness. You indeed are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, consciousness bliss. You indeed are of the nature of the faultless Supreme Brahman. You indeed are of the nature of the perfectly full Supreme Brahman. You indeed are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, which is that. You indeed are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, which is unimpeded. I have told you this great secret explanation, as expounded to me by our Lord Ishvara. Revered sage, there is no doubt in what I have said. I will repeat this thrice. This is the truth. Always assiduously practicing the certitude of the undivided Absolute with nothing apart, and becoming the nature of the pure Supreme Brahman, abide in perfectly full bliss. I have told you this definition, rare for even the gods, sages, and yogis to know, graciously bestowed upon me as the gift of the sacred Supreme Shiva, hence always assiduously practicing the certitude of the undivided Absolute, and becoming the nature of the sufferingless Supreme Brahman alone, abide in sorrowless bliss. Nidaka, I have fearlessly communicated to you the knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, communicated earlier to me as a gift by the Lord of all the worlds, on the spotless Mount Kailas, for the benefit of all beings. Be aware that it is very rare in all of the three worlds to attain this knowledge. Once the Lord Ishvara, ensconced facing the southern direction as Dakshinamurti, which is Shiva southward facing, a symbol of silent wisdom and abundance, wise or formless. Okay, so once the Lord Ishvara, facing the southern direction of Dakshinamurti, taught the sublime knowledge to the gods for 1,000 years, to strengthen their comprehension, to fortify the sublime knowledge. Ishvara, the Lord of all the worlds, taught it assiduously to the embodiment of grace, the Devi, the goddesses for a year. The son of Shiva taught this elaborately to his disciples for 7 years. Hari, or Vishnu the sustainer, graciously taught this to Brahma, the creator, for a long time in the ocean of milk. Once I taught this defectless knowledge to my father in Brahmaloka, which is the Brahma world. Once I explained this clearly and elaborately to Nirodhara and other sages. In compassion with you as the first, in compassion with you as the first, and for the benefit of all the people of the world, I have truly expounded this treatise that so easily lays bare the knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, as earlier communicated to me by the Lord Ishvara, without any abridgment or elaboration equal to this treatise. There is none anywhere, no. Blessed One, no other treatise will confer such unimpeded knowledge. Like this treatise with, is it a treatise? Am I saying it right? Treatise, I don't know. It doesn't really matter, does it? Okay. Blessed One, no other treatise will confer such unimpeded knowledge. Like this treatise with its special characteristics, other great works will only by steps confer the knowledge of the undivided Absolute. By this honored treatise alone will quickly confer the knowledge of the differenceless Supreme Brahman. Because of this, there is no treatise equal to this anywhere. There is nothing to equal a single foot of the poetry in this treatise. There is nothing to equal a single foot of the poetry in this treatise. Can there be anything anywhere to equal the other feet? What can compare with this teaching, which explains the matchless knowledge of the undivided Absolute? Therefore, put into practice this wonderful treatise with total dedication. The fruit gathered, the fruit. I have to go to the toilet quickly. Will you excuse me? I'll be 1 minute. Sorry, I'll be right back. But I can't concentrate. Sorry, I've got a tiny little bladder. The fruit carefully gathered, so much better now, but properly performing millions of sacrifices and bathing in millions of sacred streams cannot equal the fruit of studying even 1 foot of this poetry. Can we compare the fruit resulting from giving this gift to the entire world to the constant study of 2 feet of the poetry of this treatise? Gift of all varieties will not equal the fruit of properly studying 3 feet of this amazing poetry. In this wondrous, rare treatise, there is nothing anywhere to equal. The study of one stanza with due attention. Is there anything to equal the good fortune of attaining the experience of this even once? Even if not competent by nature, to listen to and understand the substance of a treatise of this quality, if one even just daily read with sincerity this blemishless work, such a reader would also progressively attain undivided knowledge, and thereby become liberated. This is the truth. Hence, casting aside everything, always take to the practice of what is expressed in this treatise. Renouncing all charity and virtuous conduct. Renouncing all sacred streams and shrines. Renouncing all kinds of japa and tapas, which are mantras, repetition, and rituals of magic. Renouncing all great mantra and tantra. Renouncing all honored gods and all worshipping of gods. And renouncing all kinds of treaties. Always take to study this treatise. Casting aside all kinds of history. I just want to mute this quickly. Mute. Hi, Amaya, my love. Casting aside all kinds of history, casting aside all kinds of action, casting aside all kinds of yoga, casting aside all kinds of philosophy, casting aside diverse varieties of devotion, casting aside all specialized approaches, and casting aside all kinds of works, always take to study this treatise. Casting aside the variety of religions, casting aside the variety of ideas, casting aside all manner of secret doctrines, casting aside the service to all, casting aside all kinds of holy acts, casting aside all good fortune, and casting aside all haunting doubts, ever take to study this treatise. Casting aside the legion of lessons, casting aside all manner of habits, casting aside the various worlds, casting aside the peerless guru, casting aside whatever is here and thereafter, casting aside whatever is thought of as something else, and casting aside all debilitating doubts, ever take to study this treatise. This treatise is indeed the Supreme Brahman. Take to the study thereof with interest. What is the studying? What is the use of studying far too many texts? Is there any use of several lamps before the brilliance of the sun? If you always thoroughly study this one treatise. The result of any text can be attained by this alone. There is not a shred of doubt about this. All distortions will be destroyed by this treatise. All veiling will be peeled off by this treatise. Quiescence in consciousness will be realized by this treatise. The repose of thought will result by this treatise. Undivided supreme knowledge will ensure with this treatise. All ignorance will be dispelled by this treatise. The originless bondage of the worldly existence will be obliterated by this treatise. An undivided supreme liberation will unfold with this treatise. All duality will die out by this treatise. Pure non-duality will prevail with this treatise. The knot of the heart will be set. The knot of the heart will be set at naught by this treatise. The concept of life will find its culmination in this treatise. All the misery of the mundane existence will melt away with this treatise. Supreme happiness will surge up by this treatise. All attachment will be annihilated by this treatise, and the abode supreme can be attained with this treatise. If this treatise is regularly read, at least once daily with dedicated discipline, even by one who is not equipped, to study and ponder over and assimilate the meaning of this treatise, all the sins committed in endless existences will be completely eliminated in that birth, and attaining profound, undivided supreme knowledge, he will abide as the nature of the taintless supreme. One who hears this even once in a lifetime will attain liberation. There is none in this world to equal one who reads this daily. Hence, hence, rare sage, casting aside the endless texts with no authority whatsoever, who would have the urge, all who have the urge for liberation should, without a day of discontinuation, take to study this spotless treatise. Observe that this treatise is the essence of the ultimate conclusion of all the scriptures. This differenceless treatise is a settled conclusion of all the Vedas and Vedanta. This honored treatise is a final conclusion of all the sages imbued with perfectly full knowledge. This revered treatise is a fitting finale, graciously gifted to us by the Lord. This is the most recondite of the recondite. This is the essences of all essence. This is the rarest of the rare in the world. This is the most marvelous message. This is the dispeller of doubts. This is the bestower of the changeless certitude. This is the destroyer of the debilitating duality. This is what confers sahaja without a second. Sage of great tapas, what avails explanations in so many words? This is the treatise to turn to for aid. On the earth, in the heavens, anywhere, the extremely rare, true it is. This is the essence of various texts, such as the Vedas, the scriptures, the epics, and others. There is not a tomb in the world to equal this treatise. Once, in days of yore, my father, with a doubt arising in his heart, that none will get liberated by this text, secreted this by throwing it into an ocean of milk. Then, coming to know of this, I immediately retrieved this. When it was washed ashore on the ocean of milk, My father was furiously enraged with me. Departing from the world that day, I reached this wonderful holy spot of Kedara, and today, moved by your devotion, I have now expounded this treatise for the benefit of all. Besides, there was no one in this world competent to understand the meaning of this treatise, and to communicate it to a competent disciple. Is not the supreme knowledge indeed rare? In thinking about that, like when they say when the student is ready, the master appears, and just how profound that is. It's like when that is ready to hear itself being spoken, like then that's what appears, like these words. This undivided knowledge is rare to come by. So also is the treatise a rarity. One who understands this rare treatise is indeed a rarity. One who graciously teaches this rare treatise is indeed a rarity. One who listens attentively to this rare treatise is also a rarity indeed. The blemishless disciple competent to listen to this work is rare, great sage. The Sadguru to teach this beneficial text is also a great rarity. Those who obtain these books devoid of differences are also rare. Because of these factors, this treatise has not achieved its proper renown. This treatise, which has the power to remove all wavering and instill all undividedness, will come within the reach only that ultimate life with no more birth, fit to attain one's natural state, after the fruition of all Dharma practice in successful births, and the removal of all sins. To those who reach this treatise, there is no more birth. This I say in the name of Maheshvara, the great Lord. I'm just going to read two more. In the days past, the Lord Ishvara, risen as a divine auspicious form, graciously taught me this text of such repute for the benefit of all. In like manner, I have also, in the spirit of compassion and in depth, taught this to you, Nidaha, who reaches this efficacious text will become the nature of Supreme Brahman or consciousness. I have said all that I have to say. Now I shall betake myself somewhere else. Hearing these profound words of the Ribhu, overcome with joy and with tears of happiness welling up in his eyes, his body in trepidation with overwhelming devotion, Nidakha prostrated himself with humility, and his voice choking. In ecstasy he uttered this. Honored Guru, with a sublime knowledge beyond comprehension, and by your compassion, small-minded, I have overcome my littleness. I have grown to be the great, undivided, complete, perfect fullness, without separate identity. By obtaining this hard-to-get audience of yourself, I have obtained all there is to be obtained in this birth, and by the rare relationship with your grace, I have become one who has successfully fulfilled all that is to be done. My guide, of all the words that you in your grace have bestowed, I have taken up for reflection one of the statements of certitude that you have uttered. thoroughly effacing all attachments and holding fast to the supreme bliss. I have become of the nature of Supreme Brahman. What shall I say of your compassion that has removed all my worldly sorrow and conferred undivided bliss? There is not an iota of doubt in what has been said. How shall I describe this greatness of yours, revered Master? There is no recompense for this help of yours rendered in compassion, Supreme Guru. My humble self would offer endless variety of obeisance to your pair of feet. But even obeisance is more of a courtesy than anything else. For is there any obeisance in the domain of the ultimate truth? All is Brahman in the ultimate truth, and no difference of any kind exists. My good guide, in the revelation of divine awareness, I have personally experienced by your compassion, there is neither I am who is speaking nor you, nor is this treatise on which has heaped such praise, no individuals affected by bondage, O Lord, and none of the differentiated earth or other worlds, revered Guru, all is the Supreme Brahman, of the undivided nature and nothing apart. Great among Gurus, in partless, undivided, supreme revelation, which I have obtained by your compassion, all is of the nature of Supreme Brahman, and there is nothing apart as all. There is no such talk as the manifold, of Brahma and of all, as being separate entities. Nothing ever exists anywhere. All that is Brahman, of the nature of awareness. Shall I read a bit more? The rapidly rising projection of I, the persistent projections of this before one, the pluralistic mode of the body and such, the witness mode of I am the witness, the undivided mode of I am the one supreme. With any such modes or projections, the sorrowless, spotless nature of the Supreme, the self-illumined, alone shines. By your grace, with all manner of differences in my mind, removed in a trice, I have reached the inexplicable, undivided natural state of my own nature. There is no doubt in what has been said, Supreme Guru, praising thus with love. He, Nadaha, was happily, readily ensconced by himself in his natural state, Sahaja. It is only for those who are blessed with the compassion of the great Shiva and the compassion of the Guru, who is the embodiment of Shiva, that the perception of the appearance of this world, individuals, and the Supreme will disappear without a trace, and the indivisible, undivided Supreme State will result. What is spoken is the truth. Thus Sutta thoroughly explained the great truth expounded to Jaheshvara Basakanda. It is the infinite form of our perfectly full Lord in a state of joyous dance that proclaims, there is nothing apart from the absolute reality, which is all complete. All is the all complete supreme reality. That you are. This is the treatise of treatises, the essence of all. Om Shri Satguru Muj Ji Ki Jai. Ananta Ji Ki Jai. Om Namah Shivaya.